He lit a luxurious cigar, taking a long, satisfying drag. He casually tossed it into the trash behind him. The flame burst from the embers, igniting the gasoline. As the cause of it all, he couldn't have cared less, and drove off the scene in his supercar. Quite brazenly, in the car, he calmly called the fire department to report the situation, then cleverly extracted their planned route of arrival. After confirming all the details were intact, he immediately parked in a narrow alleyway, near his target. Next, he changed into a janitor's uniform he had prepared in advance. Once everything was ready, he latched onto the approaching fire truck. Just like that, with his superhuman skills, this man not only infiltrated the highly guarded Diamond District of the United Kingdom, but also whistled and cheerfully greeted the guard behind him. When the fire truck passed the next corner, he jumped off the truck, landing right next to a manhole cover. Using the tools he brought, he pried it open, and Luke climbed into the smoke-filled sewer. Then, he took his time as he walked to his mission's location, using a high-tech laser flashlight to open up a path for himself. And this was the target of his trip, a small, heavily guarded vault. Luke placed a few small bombs on the safe, and with a loud explosion, millions of dollars flew everywhere. But not a single bill caught his eye. He went straight to the vault center and pulled out a small box, unassuming in appearance, because the diamonds hidden inside were what truly had value. One might think he would sell this to make a fortune, but to everyone's surprise, Luke, who never got his way, took these diamonds to negotiate with Alex. Seeing those pristine diamonds on the table, Alex was very pleased. He handed Luke a piece of paper with the coordinates of another criminal organization's hideout. Luke slowly sent those coordinates to the command center. Immediately, the US Air Force launched a precision missile strike on the target. It should have only taken completing this mission, finishing off the boss Alex in front of him, and he could retire peacefully on the spot. But unexpectedly, an incident occurred with Luke. When Alex was pouring the drink, his hand suddenly trembled, spilling it onto the diamond. The seasoned gangster, experienced for many years, immediately noticed something strange. Why did the liquid bead up on the diamond? Like this? These are uncut diamonds. They should have a coating, right? Indeed, there was a coating and it smelled like asphalt, just like a human would have a coating. It had a scent similar to tar. Is this residue from some kind of plastic caused by an explosion? Don't try to fool me. You don't own any diamond factory. These stones are stolen goods. Why did you have to lie to me about who you really are? Who are you, really? Alex grew angry. He immediately called his men to restrain Luke and began to frantically search him. Sure enough, in Luke's pocket, they found a small pill. Faced with Alex's questions, Luke candidly admitted that he was a CIA agent. The small pill was poison, meant for use if the mission failed. So now that you've failed, what will you do? I guess I'll just have to swallow this pill and end it here. Hearing this, Alex leaned down eagerly, wanting to witness Luke swallow the poison right in front of him. But strangely, after Luke took the pill with some alcohol, the two of them sat staring at each other for almost half an hour. Yet, no poison effects appeared. Why does it seem like nothing's happening? Think about it from another angle. What if I just swallowed an antidote? Despite the obstacles, Luke ultimately completed his mission. In the end, before leaving, he didn't forget to grab the diamonds on the table. After all, a beach vacation after retirement would require a decent budget. But little did Luke expect that the very next day, when he returned home to celebrate, he stumbled upon a shocking secret. Due to the nature of his work, he had to keep his family in the dark, so they believed he was just an old fitness equipment salesman. Today, he finally got to see his youngest daughter, Emma, whom he was so proud of. But strangely, he noticed that she seemed to have a few bruises on her arm. Emma explained it was from a fall while skateboarding. At first, Luke didn't think much of it, but a week later, when he went to the CIA to finalize his retirement, his longtime partner, Barry, was informed that his superiors had assigned a new mission. The CIA had an agent with the codename Pander, currently undercover at a terrorist base in Vienna. According to intelligence, Pander was at risk of being exposed next week. Therefore, his superiors wanted Luke to take on one last mission before retirement: help Pander retrieve the terrorist's nuclear suitcase and bring them both home. The terrorist leader in the photo was named Boro, whose father had died at Luke's hands 25 years ago. Although Boro had grown up and taken over his father's role, he was unaware of this fact, and even regarded Luke as a benefactor. So as soon as they met, Boro enthusiastically gave Luke a tour of his base, believing Luke to be a fellow young agent at just 75. When he saw a fight going on in the distance, he was frozen in shock, for in the ring was a very strong girl, his beloved daughter Emma, the one he always thought would never drink, smoke, or curse. Oh dear. Watching his daughter in the ring, delivering powerful blows, so different from the image he had of her, Luke felt like his heart had just dropped. After an intense and thrilling match, Boro eagerly introduced the two of them to each other. Just one look at each other, and they both instantly understood each other's backgrounds, but outwardly they pretended as if it was their first meeting, greeting each other. I really like the way you pinned him to the ground. It's decent. I practiced that move for 6 months. Be careful. I know someone who fell flat just from skating. But when everyone around left, the two suddenly exploded. Luke angrily called Barry, his logistics officer. It was clear Barry had known about this all along. He helplessly accepted Luke's video call. My daughter is working for the CIA again. Hey, old buddy. Hello, Uncle Barry. Hey, sweetie. Say that again and I'm mad, Barry hurriedly explained. Maybe Emma inherited Luke's top agent genes. The CIA used tricks to recruit her as an agent a few years back, and to ensure they wouldn't get distracted, they intentionally arranged for the two to operate in different areas, even forcing those who knew about it to sign confidentiality agreements. Now, once they secure the terrorist's nuclear briefcase, Everything can be negotiated with higher-ups. That evening, Luke was invited to a party at the terrorist base. Luke noticed that Boro seemed a bit different. He went on stage to show respect to Luke, then called one of his close followers up. Everyone thought Boro was going to reward him, but unexpectedly, it seemed he had just received some news. "Where's my money? Where's the money from the last arms deal? I never touched that money. I swear I'm not lying to you, Boro. Please don't." Perhaps Boro did this as a warning. To Luke, the newcomer, that cooperation means money. Playing tricks here leads to eating dirt. After the henchman cleared the body, Boro immediately approached Luke, who was sitting there in shock. He asked curiously, "My father once told me that you invented a technique to kill by cutting the throat vertically, causing the opponent to bleed out rapidly." Boro said he had never witnessed this killing technique and hoped to see it in person someday. After talking to Boro, Luke turned and bumped into an old man. The old man took the opportunity to slip a piece of paper into Luke's hand. Though a bit puzzled, Luke found a moment alone to look at it. Then, without hesitation, he excused himself to find Emmer. It turned out the old man was willing to pay a hefty sum for Luke to take his whole family out. When they left this place, Emma, of course, disagreed. But the father and daughter didn't argue much, because they had a more important mission at hand. Late that night, two of Boro's henchmen were on their way to a nearby rice field to pick up a shipment. They suddenly saw a dead cow blocking the path. They assumed some villager had carelessly hit it and killed the cow with their vehicle, so they decided to move it aside to continue. But then someone suddenly ambushed them. Gotta say, Emmer is quite twisted. She didn't care at all about the cow's dignity, crawling inside its carcass to set up an ambush. Luke felt helpless, but he couldn't change her mind. The father and daughter had to stuff the cow carcass into the trunk and drove the jeep to the rice field to find the contact, because the CIA had informed Luke that the contact was aware of Emma's true identity. They had to quickly figure out how to handle him. But unexpectedly, the father and daughter were still arguing over trivial matters. Luke criticized Emma for dating a useless boyfriend, while Emma took a jab back about Luke getting cheated on by his wife. And they kept debating, like in a debate competition, forgetting about the poor contact who had died because of them. Alright, what do we do now? You just have to accept the truth. Mom's in love with someone else. No, I mean, how do we deal with the body? The next morning, Emma, looking confident, as if she had solved everything, pulled out her notebook and began discussing with Luke the plan to steal the nuclear briefcase. Since weapons were not allowed in the base, Emma pulled out two black market pistols that she had bought. One was an automatic rifle, and the other a small pink revolver. Clearly, Luke was at a disadvantage, but as the two were discussing, a roar suddenly sounded outside the door from Boro. After all, the contact's disappearance last night was no small matter. Boro's second-in-command immediately suspected the father and daughter. Luke tried to explain, but just then, a woman's scream came from the river bank. Boro and the henchmen rushed out to see. On the river surface, the bodies of the two contacts from last night were floating, and Boro noticed a cut running down the neck of one of them. Damn it! Boro was furious, and immediately summoned all his men to lock down the entire base and hunt for Luke. But unexpectedly, Emma had already led Luke to the hiding place of the nuclear briefcase, along with the old man who had given him the note last night. Did you ask him to come? You think he's a good guy? But he works for Boro. If he did, he would have shot us by now. We can't take that risk. I'm not one of Boro's men. Seeing Boro's men closing in on them, Luke quickly came up with a plan. He sent the coordinates of the nuclear briefcase to Barry, and asked Barry to hack into the system and create a fake detonation alarm. The henchmen were so scared they wet themselves, allowing Luke to easily grab the nuclear briefcase. Then the three of them took a jeep left behind by the henchmen, and headed toward the rendezvous point with the helicopter. However, the loud noise alerted Boro's men to their presence. In the ensuing chase, he immediately pulled out the pink pistol and fired back, but the bumpy ride made it impossible for him to aim accurately. Frustrated, Luke jumped onto the enemy's car. Then they sped off, finally reaching the rendezvous point. But just before the helicopter arrived, Boro showed up with a group of henchmen. Knowing the situation was dire, Luke reluctantly raised his hands in surrender. "Do you have any idea how much you've hurt me? I trusted you that much. Tell me, who are you working for?" Luke didn't respond, which made Boro furious. He grabbed the old man's daughter, threatening her life to force Luke to reveal the truth. But unexpectedly, instead of yielding, Luke started telling Boro the truth about the death of his father. "Your father was hanging by his collar on a cliff edge, crying like a child, begging me to spare his life. He even wet his pants. I'm going to make you all suffer to death, including this kid. I'll make your lives worse than death. Call me stupid. Why would you tell me the truth like that? Because I'm buying time." Boro looked up and saw a CIA helicopter suddenly appearing in the sky, ready to open fire. The powerful force from above caused chaos among the terrorists below. In an instant, Luke and Emmer took the opportunity to grab weapons from the ground and find cover, quickly eliminating all immediate threats. Though they ultimately allowed Boro to escape, at least they had completed their mission. After returning home and handing over the mission, Luke thought he could retire in peace. But he was surprised to find that his superiors had assigned the father and daughter another difficult mission. They discovered that Boro was working on creating weapons of mass destruction and planned to hijack a train carrying nuclear waste. To carry out his plot, Luke and Emma were assigned new identities, and with two other team members, they boarded the train. Luke, the father and daughter, still hadn't realized that they were about to face an extremely dangerous challenge. While traveling on the high-speed train, Luke suddenly noticed a suspicious man sitting in the row behind, eating a sandwich with scarred hands. He might be an assassin. He was eating a bacon sandwich, but people from Kazakhstan don't eat pork. Although Luke realized the man definitely had something wrong with him, he decided to observe him further. Unexpectedly, just as the train started moving, the two people sitting by the window were horrified to notice a helicopter above, flying right over their heads. Emma, feeling uneasy, quickly turned around to look behind her. Sure enough, the man eating the sandwich had disappeared. Seeing this, Luke immediately reacted and quickly climbed to the top of the train, moving across the junction between two carriages. Luke was horrified to discover that the man was using the helicopter's hose to siphon nuclear waste from the rear carriage. Though they had taken him down, the helicopter's hose had already started siphoning the waste. The logistics team calculated and informed them that they only had 12 minutes to stop it. Hearing this, Emma immediately drew her revolver and aimed to shoot down the helicopter. But this plan was immediately dismissed by the logistics team because if the helicopter carrying the nuclear waste was shot down, the vast agricultural land several kilometers around will be contaminated. Now, their only option is to make the ship go faster. The helicopter forces them to disconnect the pipeline by themselves. But unexpectedly, when the father and son entered the cockpit, they discovered that the ship's captain was an accomplice of the terrorists. After an intense fight with dual swords, full of drama, father and son not only defeated the ship's captain, but also accidentally destroyed the automatic acceleration button. Helpless, the two had to ask logistics for a solution. There is a cooling box under the floor. Let's open it immediately. Luke didn't hesitate. He immediately opened the cooling box with his daughter. But the magnetic cooling fluid could not be too much, nor too little. Unsure of how many valves to open, Luke had to ask logistics. But unexpectedly, it was exactly Luke who said, "I've opened for valves. Dinley Vien SS Biektichon Ne. DGIK Laben Dutch Ju Nuyan Hung Thijion Sieben." What? Why did you open for valves? Because you just said for, and I haven't said anything yet. Actually, Barry said for. I mean my ex-wife's current boyfriend. Luke, he just took for Viagra pills. I knew it. Dad was watching him. Dad, you're shameless. It turns out that while Luke was on duty, he secretly asked his partner to spy on his ex-wife. When Emma found out, she was furious. But luckily, the excessive coolant helped the train reach maximum speed. The helicopter saw the situation was unstable and had to disconnect the pipeline and leave quickly. However, because Luke opened for valves, the train is now running at 400 kilometers per hour. If we don't slow down quickly, half the town ahead will be destroyed. Congratulations, Dad. DGIK Laben Dutch Ju Nuyan Thi Jian Sieben. Dad just created the world's largest mobile nuclear bomb. The largest in the world. After consulting logistics, the father and son were panicking, but suddenly realized that if cooling could speed up the train, then heating would definitely slow it down. Emma, quick-witted, thought of the extremely hot nuclear waste pipeline on the roof of the train, but Luke thought the train was moving too fast, and Emma would be blown away by the wind if she climbed up. After thinking for a while, they came up with a plan. In the past, to mend their relationship, father and son had custom-made a powerful electronic vest on each grain of rice. Just press the button on the belt, and the strong magnetic field would pull them together. But unexpectedly, Luke brought it along on the mission. So this time, it was Emmer, small but mighty, climbing up the roof of the train. Luke, under the train, activated the magnet to pull his daughter tightly. After a hard struggle, Emma realized she was still a short distance away from the pipeline. She called out to Luke to play a game. When they were kids, Luke would press the button to disconnect the belt. This helped Emma stand firmly on the roof of the train. Then she jumped up and grabbed the pipe swaying in the wind. Luke timed it right and flipped the switch on the vest. The strong magnetic pull stuck Emma to the side of the train. Got you, sweetheart. Got you. Immediately, the father and son brought the pipe to the cockpit. After correctly adjusting the initial switch, the ship's magnet pump began to heat up, and the train speed gradually decreased. It looks like we've succeeded, even though we didn't catch Boro. But they stopped him from stealing a large amount of nuclear waste. For an agent nearly 80 years old like Luke, it could be considered a win. With Luke at the terrorist base, although they didn't recover all the nuclear waste, the Boro they seized from the helicopter was enough for him to continue his research. However, now if they want a new breakthrough, they must obtain a thesis on the reuse of nuclear waste, which is banned across Central Asia. Knowing Boro's plan, through information from the mole, they decided to act first. In Luke's deal, the terrorists suddenly noticed the seller, standing not far away, with a strange wound on his stomach that was bleeding. Don't open the suitcase. Although Boro realized this was a trap, they didn't have time to react and were hit by tranquilizer darts fired from the suitcase. Boro, knowing the situation was critical, tried to run, but Luke was already lying in wait. He drove his beloved small truck, chasing Boro across the vast prairie. Even though Boro stubbornly ran for 10 kilometers, when the tranquilizer started taking effect, he was exhausted and collapsed. Luke, at the scene of the transaction, Taylor received the news that Luke had caught him. Without hesitation, Taylor took off his shirt, intending to teach the big guy in front of him a lesson. Before Taylor could recover, he suddenly realized that the person who just shot to save him was his ex-girlfriend Tina. She didn't say a word, drove the supercar away from the scene, leaving Taylor in stunned silence. On the surface, the operation seemed successful, but in reality, everything was part of Boro's plan. During Luke's interrogation, there was no fear in his eyes. He even said that he was willing to provide information about the locations of other terrorist bases. But I have one small request. Please detain me the way I want. I want to be confined to Bora Bora, and my assets must not be touched. The ankle tracker must be waterproof because I want to walk on the beach. Actually, this is still a kind of prison. The only difference is that the bars are replaced with white sand. Hearing this, Luke and Emma just let Burrow's words go in one ear and out the other. But unexpectedly, the CIA's superiors thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Ignoring Emma's objections, Luke and his son took Burrow to a remote warehouse. Here, Burrow used the nuclear suitcase they had seized earlier to record a video and post it on the dark web. Within 15 minutes, countless purchase requests from terrorists around the world started flooding in. Seeing this, the CIA's counterterrorism department leader did not hesitate, mobilizing all counterterrorism forces and special forces operatives to attack all the locations sent to them. But then, they were horrified to discover that all those bases were empty. It was only then that everyone realized Burrow's target from the beginning was the nuclear suitcase. He had intentionally gotten caught in the previous transaction, using fake information about the terrorists to lure the counterterrorism forces elsewhere, and then sent people to attack the warehouse, which was left unguarded. Everyone could only watch in disbelief as Burrow retrieved the nuclear suitcase. Then he calmly left the warehouse. The counterterrorism leader was furious. When she witnessed this scene, she couldn't believe she had made such a huge mistake. Therefore, in the meeting a week later, the CIA shifted their focus to eliminating Burrow. They investigated and found Burrow was hiding in a basement in Serbia. To assist the agents in completing the mission, the CIA contacted neighboring European countries. Using the excuse of transporting coffins, they sent agents, along with a large amount of advanced weaponry, into Serbia. After landing, the agents immediately changed vehicles and headed to Burrow's base. But at that moment, something horrifying happened. Local terrorists suddenly attacked the agents. Luke realized they had been bought by Burrow. The agents did not hesitate and immediately used heavy weaponry. 2 jeeps charged and attacked, but were wiped out in the blink of an eye. Luke intended to get out of the vehicle to check for any survivors to interrogate, but just then someone shot Taylor in the shoulder. Although not seriously injured, they still decided to go to the hospital to make sure. But unexpectedly, the chubby girl in the team accidentally pulled the trigger. Now, with no transport, they had no choice but to walk to the target to complete the mission. After resting Taylor in a drainage tunnel, Luke and Emma went straight into their target factory. Father and son split up. They advanced into the basement where Burrow was hiding. In an instant, Luke noticed that terrorists were patrolling outside. He approached the base and quickly eliminated the guards. Suddenly, Luke saw Burrow right in front of him. He could shoot and kill Burrow, then leave immediately. But the director had Luke and Burrow talk to each other for a moment. Then Burrow's second-in-command appeared just in time to help him escape. But unexpectedly, when they reached the next corner, Burrow ran into Emma, who was also searching for him. After a few missed shots, Emma immediately chased Burrow. When she reached the corner ahead, she suddenly saw Burrow drop the nuclear suitcase on the ground. Although she knew he was baiting her, Emma, lacking experience, still fell into the trap. Burrow, being stronger, strangled Emma until she couldn't breathe. On the other side, although Luke was gaining the upper hand in the fight, the bastard Burrow played dirty. He pulled out a grenade. Without hesitation, he pulled the pin and threw it straight at Luke. But as the main character, Luke wasn't going down that easily. It was truly desperate. The shockwave from the explosion helped Emma break free, but it also caused the already dilapidated basement to begin collapsing. The pile of rubble blocked the only exit. Meanwhile, Luke and the logistics team realized the temperature in the basement was rising rapidly. If the detonator in the nuclear suitcase reaches its threshold, it will explode and everyone, including the agents, will die together here. Upon hearing this, Du immediately took Taylor out of the tunnel. Luke, in a panic, frantically called out for Emma. He even ran outside and started pounding madly on the manhole cover. But an old man near death couldn't possibly open the manhole cover with his own strength. Luke quickly grabbed a nearby steel pipe and applied the principle of leverage he had learned at Cambridge. Finally, he managed to pry open the rusty manhole cover. Luckily, Emma, who inherited her father's intelligence, had also found a ventilation shaft. To escape, Emma had to temporarily team up with Burrow, using him as a bridge. Emma quickly grabbed onto Luke and climbed out of the pipe. But this time, Burrow miscalculated. Luke looked at Burrow, stunned beneath the pipe. With a steely gaze, he then turned and ran. Burrow, in despair, could only sit still praying hopelessly. A loud explosion rang out. Everything turned to smoke. The logistics team reported the explosion spread deep into the ground. This intellectual battle finally came to an end. What no one expected was that 6 months later, Luke's ex-wife married her lover, hoping to win her back. Luke gave her his medal. But right after that, a bomb in the car made Emma realize the situation was critical. Immediately pulling out her gun inside the church, the sound of gunfire rang out. A group of terrorists stormed in from outside to protect the children. Luke rushed out through the side door and shot them down. After a fierce gunfight, they finally eliminated all the terrorists. But when everyone thought it was over, Burrow suddenly appeared from the back door and took Luke's mother hostage. The scar on his face proved that he survived the nuclear explosion. Since then, he had been harboring a desire for revenge. Today, he finally had his chance. Burrow, who had lost all humanity, forced Luke and Emma to point guns at each other. He wanted to see the family destroy each other to break the deadlock. Luke said to his ex-wife, after everything that had happened, she deserved to receive a medal. Upon hearing this, Luke's mother suddenly understood. She took the medal from her pocket. Now, no matter how carefully Burrow examined it, he couldn't revive himself. Then, Tarly and Aryu also arrived to assist. Although Burrow was dead, they brought even more shocking news. All of their identities had been revealed by Burrow. Luke, having worked for so many years must have had many enemies. So the CIA had to put them all in a vehicle. What their future holds is still a mystery, but at least the first season of the Chaotic Front is officially over. It was truly a chaotic mess. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie. What did you think of this movie? Please comment below.